Hey guys, welcome to the 20th episode of the Blue Deck Podcast. Can you believe it? 20 episodes already? That's a lot, right? It seems like a lot to me. If you're new here, welcome. Thanks for dropping in. Just so you know, this show is in serial format, which means the episodes are intended to be enjoyed in order. Wherever you listen, Apple Podcasts, Google, Podbean, Spotify, there should be a way to set up playback for our show in order of oldest to newest, if it isn't like that already. Now, for those of you who've been along for the ride, to help me celebrate our 20th show, I'm putting you to work. Yes, you guys have a mission. A couple missions, actually. Number 1, please rate the show. I know I hark on this a lot, but I'm going to keep at it because it's so important. Really, it's the best way for new listeners to find us. Just recently, Levito reviewed the show writing, "I'm only one chapter in, but I dig the setup. I love the poetic gymnastics and the enthusiastic narration." Wow, that's super kind. I really love reading stuff like that. Normally, I wouldn't say this, but if you haven't rated the show, stop now and go do it, especially if you listen on Apple Podcast. Don't worry, we'll wait for you to get back. If you don't listen on Apple's app, rate and review the show wherever you can. I understand that not all platforms allow ratings, so if you can't rate it, or if you already have, please share the show with a friend. I'd really appreciate it. Okay, mission number 2. If you earn merit badges of any kind, either through your work, by volunteering, if you're in the Scouts, basically any kind of patches, I want to see them. For example, if you're a soldier who listens to this show, I know you earn badges of one kind or another. I want to see them. Get a picture of yourself in uniform and send it in, for goodness sake. I'm serious. If the Patch Fairy is ever going to be rescued, we need some senseless optimism out there. And this isn't just for right now. It's any time. If you listen to this 10 years from now, that's totally fine. Get me those pictures. Send them to me through social media or email. I'll go over all the ways to contact me at the end of the show, and there'll be links in the description. Are we ready for the recap? I think we are, so take it away, Layla.
In Chapter 14, Charles and his friends spend their first night in the desert of a strange new world. As Charles laid on the ground watching Ozzie build a shelter with the door he had recovered out of the sand, Dawn, the crew's new chief officer, busied herself inventorying their supplies. In Charles' backpack, she finds, among other things, a toy Yoda action figure and lists it in their inventory. Charles has found in his pocket a cap of a Coke bottle. After seeing her record the Yoda figure, he wonders if the bottle cap should be added to their supplies list, but rejects the idea. Overall, our friend Charles is feeling depressed, so far from his home, and now he has been demoted too. In the morning, they set off in search of a mysterious place called Salvation Mountain, and what they find isn't anything they expected. It is an enormous art project of desert wreckage, paint covering everything, even the ground. And on everything is painted messages of God's love. Then there is a mount itself. What that looks like, we're about to find out.
15. Salvation Mountain. Salvation Mountain was no natural land formation. It was a construction of clay, paint, straw, dead trees, and every other thing found out in the desert. It stood the height of a 3-story apartment building, maybe a little higher, and from its peak rose a tall, skinny cross. Judging size was difficult at a distance, but I thought the cross was as tall as a telephone pole, or maybe it was a telephone pole. Beside me I heard Don's feather-soft voice reading a message painted on the mountainside. "Jesus, I'm a sinner. Please come upon my body and my heart." The message was formed in white letters, each as tall as a person, and painted onto a huge red heart-shaped backdrop. Confession was one of the 2 major themes offered by the strange man-made hill. The other, the most prominent, stood out like a sculpture near the peak. It read, "God is love," in bulging red bubble letters. Then I noticed the yellow road we were walking on continued its winding way up the mountain top. At the base of the hill, Ozzie and William had ventured over to a little adobe hut. When I caught up to them, Ozzie was peering inside. "This place is weird," he said. William ducked his head through the doorway, and I walked over to see inside. The interior walls of the hovel were painted with messages of hope and love, also of turning away from evil ways. There were small cubbies dug into the dome. Some held candles. One contained a journal filled with prayers. I saw in another a toy station wagon decorated in a similar style as a truck in the yard. I picked it up. The roof bore a raised heart formed in painted clay. From the open window of the toy car sprouted a rolled-up piece of paper. I slid it out, careful not to chip the brittle paint. "What's it say?" William asked. I opened it and read, "Come upon me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." I was feeling the weight of my burdens plenty at the moment, but I suppose the same could be said of everyone who found themselves in this strange place. Rotating the little station wagon in my fingers, a part of me wanted to keep the car, to make it my souvenir. That felt like stealing, so I rolled the message and stuck it back into the window for the next curious passerby. Then I returned the car to its hollowed-out garage in the wall. "Either of you guys ready to go home?" They looked to each other. William's eyebrows lifted, and he shrugged. He was getting close, but Ozzie grinned. "I like it here," Ozzie said. "Sure, but I didn't know how to finish." William stepped back through the open door into the daylight. "We're here now. We may as well see it through. It would be great to rescue the ferry, you know." When we got back outside, we found Captain Kidd waiting for us by the yellow road. His desert robe billowed behind him in a light breeze. His chin was uplifted, his head cocked to one side like he was listening to something far away. When I concentrated on the wind, I could hear the gentle whine of a distant engine. "What is it?" I asked. The captain crinkled his nose. "Desert folk, I guess. People come out here sometimes." He turned to the hill, cupping a hand to his mouth. "Hello? Man of the mountain, anybody home?" After a moment we heard a reply. "Ahoy! Up here!" I searched the hillside. Near the V in God is Love, I spotted a thin-framed man. He had a white, short-cropped beard and wore a checkered shirt with the sleeves rolled up below his elbows. His skin was the color of a baseball glove. He waved to us with a paintbrush in his hand. "Have you come here for a tour? I'm fixin' a crag, be done in an hour or so. Else you can show yourselves around. All who come are welcome." Our leader lowered his hood and repositioned his white captain's cap back onto his head. "It is I, old-timer, Captain Kidd. Do you have a moment to share with us knowledge of travelers going west into the great city? We are on an important quest. Also, we'll take water if it's offered." The man stood straighter. "It would be an honor to share a drink with one of the 7. He shaded his eyes. "And your knights if they come in peace." He stepped up between the giant letters O and V in love. "We mean you no harm," the captain said. "Neither to you nor to your mountain." He looked at the horizon. "Although someone else comes this way by the sound of it." The mountain man looked west. "That would be the moon folk. Kybees, I call 'em. They ride motorcycles and drive dune buggies. Come out here to go wild, they do. 'Tis all right, I'm expecting 'em." Captain Kidd squinted against the sun. His fingers were drumming at his thigh. He wore no pistol, but he was standing with the cool tension of a gunslinger in a Western movie. To my right, Ozzie adjusted the grip on his baseball bat. Don took a step closer to William, who was making fists again. And what was I doing? Nothing, just standing there. The captain looked to the sky, then relaxed regarding Don. "It's okay, we're safe for now." Then to the rest of us, "Go explore. The chief and I will hold council with the man of the mountain, but stay within shouting distance. I don't want to have to look for you when it's time to leave." I walked with William and Ozzie along the trails around the mountain and into its caves and secret places. Then I followed my friends up the yellow street, past the giant, freestanding proclamation, "God is love." There we found the mountain man's paint bucket and brush, and the subject of his repair, a series of cracks in the plaster, some as long as our arms and wide enough to insert fingers down into the gaps. At one such fissure, the old man had stuffed the hole with a mashed-up blend of straw and clay. Other places he was on the painting phase, his choice of color brightest yellow. Why yellow, and why not some other color? No reason that I could see. Near the mountain peak the scale of the art project amazed me, and even I was moved by the carefree playfulness of it. Yet, even looking through the hole in the giant red O in God, I felt the disappointing undercurrent of my demotion. Down in the yard, the captain and Don stood with the mountain painter on the shaded side of the sand-sunken flatbed truck. Don was taking notes in her notebook. They were deciding what course we'd take next. I should have been down there. I meandered behind William and Ozzie, continuing to the top of Salvation Mountain. As I stood at the base of the towering cross, wind carried the sounds of revving engines across the flatland. I looked in that direction, and the direction of another mysterious place the captain called the Great City. The city must have been on the other side of the mountain range because I saw no sign of it. However, in the far-off distance, I could make out a trailing dust cloud. The moon folk, the Kybees. I looked at my friends. Ozzie stared up at the white cross as reverently as possible for a kid with an orange t-shirt on his head. Next to the cross, his head covering reminded me of a nun's habit. Ozzie the nun, that was a funny thought. Instead of a nun, he'd have to be a priest or maybe a monk, but somehow that was even more ridiculous. I followed his gaze up to the telephone pole cross. We had come through the desert and found in the wilderness a route that linked this world to our own, and it was an important route at that. If people here knew of religion, what else would they know of our world? Maybe someone could show us the way back. That was one hope, a thin one. Below it ran another. The demotion had sunken me into a semi-serious depression. Also, my body was exhausted. Yet, despite those concerns, I still could not deny a sense of purpose to this journey. My trip into the attic had begun with a prayer, and this flamboyant mountain was as bold of a confirmation as anyone could hope for. What purpose could such an odd construction serve, and for what audience was it made, if not for downtrodden travelers like myself? In the clear desert sunlight, the whiteness of the cross was too bright to look at for long, so I shaded my eyes with my flapping t-shirt turban and looked away. William crouched to peer into a hole in the mountain top. When I stood beside him, I could see the scrambled patchwork of painted tree branches and columns of plaster-coated tires supporting the inside of the monumental hill. "You think that man built this place all by himself?" I asked. William looked at me through his black sunglasses. The t-shirt on his head flapped white in the wind. "If he did, probably took him 20 years. I wonder where he gets all the paint." He straightened, looking out of the yard. Below us, the strange old mountain painter went into a shed on the back of the truck. When he came out again, he was holding an armful of water bottles. The captain whistled and waved to us. "Come on, we're leaving!" At the gatepost, Don passed out the waters. After gulping down half a bottle, I wiped my mouth and asked, "Where are we going now?" I pointed to the growing plume of kicked-up dust. "Those people are coming this way fast." The captain unscrewed a bottle cap and refilled his canteen. When the bottle was empty, he crushed it against his leg and shot a glance to the west. "We'll see them on the trail. Most likely they'll be friendly, but be prepared to fight if they test us." He eyed Ozzie. "Keep that bat ready on your shoulder." Then he dropped the crushed bottle in the pile at his feet and took Dawn's notebook, flipping it open to her inventory. "Charles, says here you have an army knife?" He looked at me with curious attention. I dug in my pocket. "A Swiss army knife? It isn't for battles, it's for survival. Got a saw blade and toothpick and whatnot." Uselessly, Ozzie asked, "How's a toothpick gonna help you survive?" Captain Kidd huffed. "Sounds like junk. Let me see it anyway." When I gave it over, he opened all the various tools. Before passing it back, he weighed the little red knife in his palm. "I stand corrected. It's a fine instrument, Charles Miller. You should be proud of it." I was. "But it isn't made for fighting," he agreed. "The blade doesn't have a lock. In a skirmish it could close in your fingers. Don't use it unless there's nothing else." His finger ran down the items listed in Dawn's neat cursive. Pausing, he looked at William. "What's a Rubik's Cube?" William shrugged. "It's like a square puzzle thing. You want to see it?" With a straight face, Captain Kidd asked, "Could you kill someone with it?" Ozzie laughed openly, but William managed to restrain his reaction to a crooked-faced grin. If I made him eat it, that only made Ozzie laugh harder. Stuffing my knife back in my pocket, I interrupted. "Captain, you're barking up the wrong tree. None of us brought weapons unless you count the baseball bat." The captain offered the notebook back to Don. "What say you, Chief?" That was seriously starting to annoy me. "Sorry," she said. "Charles is right. We weren't planning on fighting anybody." The man of the mountain thumbed toward his shed. "I got a pistole, couple of sabers if you want 'em. I've no use for 'em out here." "Then why do you have them?" Don asked. The old man rubbed his thin chest. "Took 'em in on trade. Figured I could trade 'em again if I had the need." The captain shouldered his pack. "Thank you for your kindness, sir, but you may need your weapons if you stay out here long enough. Perhaps we'll make a withdrawal from the king's armory if we go all the way to Atsuma. Besides, by the sound of those engines, I doubt we'll have to worry about the Kybees just yet." The elderly man dipped his head. "You know best." We left the tranquil grounds of the painted mountain and ventured back into the desert sand. How far we were from the great city, or this other place, Atsuma, I didn't know. If they were any sort of reasonable distance, I would have seen them from atop the hill. I looked to the west again. The only thing I saw above the scraggly brush was a trailing wafts of dust. The Kybees, the moon folk, and they were getting closer. I felt the bulge in my pocket, the knife, a good tool but not built for battles. Marshal Rabin should have come with us. Captain Kidd led the way. but I lingered by the gate. All the desert offered was bleak mystery and danger. The mountain, at least, spoke of Jesus and love, things I knew something about. Then I noticed by the gate a mailbox covered in the same painted adobe as the rest of Salvation Mountain. The flag was down. Maybe there were letters inside. Dawn waited for me, her hand reaching for mine. "Come on, Charles." She was wrapped in her sheet like a desert princess. "I guess I don't want to go," I said. She stepped closer. "It wasn't your fault. Making me chief was a mistake." "Maybe." I looked to the others. They were giving us space. "You're a good chief," I said. "You took a better inventory than I would have." She reached for my hand again. "We need to stay together, especially with you. You're our glue." I puffed out a bitter laugh. "I'm trying to do the right thing, and I want to be like a team player and all, but I said it before and I'll say it again. We can't just follow this guy endlessly so far from home. There's no hope of going back." I took her hand, desperately wanting someone on my side. "What about the Patch Fairy?" she asked. Like Marshal Rabin said, she's outside our jurisdiction. When Dawn didn't immediately respond, I pressed the point. "You know I'm not wrong." Then, feeling so isolated I could die, I released her fingers. She stared at me a long time, her face like an angel's, enshrouded by the beaming white sheet draped over her blonde hair. At last she sighed and waved the group over to us. When we were all standing in a circle, she addressed the gathering. "Charles makes a good point. Even if the Patch Fairy is kidnapped, and I'm sure she is, and that's awful, still, we have to have some idea of what we're committing to." She paused, standing stiffly, her lips working against her teeth. Then she looked to our leader. "How far are we going?" The captain's voice was reserved, patient, even cautious with his answer. "That depends. It matters how far ahead of us she is and how long it takes to find her." His eyes took in our expressions, which were mixed, but everyone present was very interested to know how this exchange would turn out. Dawn cleared her throat, glanced to me by her side, then looked to our leader. "We need something more solid than that, sir." Then she added in a low, regretful tone, "With all due respect." The captain's right hand adjusted his grip on the shoulder strap of the rifle. As he moved it into a comfortable position, the barrel of the gun tilted in the air. "I reckon we'll aim for Dollop Tree. It's a tiny town, not much more than a bus stop, but they'll have a phone. We'll call ahead, let the king know what's going on, and the Castatine's headed his way." "Then we can go home?" I asked. Captain Kidd rolled his lips together. "We'll see, Charles. I hope so for your sake." "What about that other place?" William asked. "The one that starts with an A." The captain nodded. "Atsuma. That's where the king lives. If we're lucky, maybe we won't have to go that far, but I just don't know yet." "And the great city?" Ozzie asked. Captain Kidd regarded him. "Atsuma is the great city." He turned to face the desert. "Chief, is the crew ready to go now?" Dawn looked to Ozzie, and Ozzie gave a thumbs up. When she met eyes with William, he nodded confirmation. Then to me, "What about you?" she asked. "I'm with you guys," I said, and made myself smile. I was with them for better or worse, so I would make the best of it. If Don would be the chief, and that wasn't likely to change any time soon, I suppose I should try to embrace my newfound title of electro-technical officer. At least, I should embrace it until we got to Dollop Tree, whatever that might be. Only problem was, since crossing into the attic of the world, I saw nothing with working electricity. The captain started into the wilderness, and when he was a dozen paces ahead, he turned, beckoning for us to follow. "Come on, if you're coming. We have a long way to go." I put on a brave face and stepped lively. "Captain, I have one recommendation." "Oh," he said whimsically. "What's that?" "If you think the Kybees mean to harm us, we should come at them with the suns to our backs. I saw that in a movie once." Captain Kidd looked to the sky. In your world, that wouldn't be possible this late in the day, not with us walking west. Here the situation's reversed." He looked to the others in our party, their faces all tilted upward, studying the sunshine. The captain put his hands on William's shoulders and moved him sideways off the road. "When we meet the moon folks, step off the trail to the right. That should put the sun where we want it." Then to me, "Anything else?" When I shook my head, he called out, "Then what are we waiting for?" He turned on his heels. "The wilderness awaits, and beyond lies the bus stop in Dollop Tree. Between here and there, closer to here I imagine, we will find the Kybees and see what their mood is like." Then he was walking. Funny how the captain could so quickly lift my spirits. I looked back one last time at the red hearts and flowers, white crosses, and the colorful messages of repentance and love. What a sight! So full of hope, like a beacon of life in a land of dry bones. Then, with one hand taking Don's and the other on the knife in my pocket, I stepped again into the unpainted sand toward whatever new mysteries lay ahead. All right, getting pretty interesting. Remember, my version of Salvation Mountain is based on a real place originally constructed by the desert-dwelling artist Leonard Knight. It's a little trippy for some folks, but I've been there 3 times now, and it's always impressed me with the variety of people drawn to the landmark. Leonard Knight passed away in 2014, and now the charitable organization Salvation Mountain, Inc. takes donations to help with the site's constant upkeep. So, dear listeners, if you ever find yourself driving through the California desert, check it out and bring a can of lead-free paint to donate to the cause. Also, don't forget you have homework. Please take a moment to rate the show and write a review. Who knows, I might even read it on the air. And send me pictures of your merit badges. If you earn any kind of patch, I want to see them. Actually, my wife earned some merit badges last week. Okay, they were stickers, but that still counts. They were for her kindness, thoughtfulness, sweetness, best cook, and #1 best mom. Wow, go Joanna. Of course, I knew that already. If you want to get a hold of me or send me pics of merit badges, I'm on Facebook at Joseph Mazarak Author, on Twitter at Joseph Mazarak, or email me, joseph@thebluedeck.com. Hey, one last thing. If you're listening to this show and you're a writer, we offer a few writing services on our website. Need a knowledgeable, unbiased reader to review the beginning of your manuscript? Our 30-page review is only $60. That's a great value. I know how difficult it is to write a good first chapter. You wouldn't believe how many revisions into The Attic of the World went through. When the book comes out, the beginning will be a little bit different than the start of the podcast. Not much difference, but I finally smoothed out a few of the transitions I wasn't totally satisfied with. Anyway, we'll review your story, going over several time-tested elements of storycraft, and even if we suggest changes, we try to be nice about it. To find out more, visit us at thebluedeck.com.
Okay, now.